Today we know of a theory known as the theory of probability. Theory of probability means if you make a wild guess, what are the chances that you'll be right? For example, if you toss a coin, it can either be heads or tails. Two options. If you make a wild guess, it's head. The chances you'll be correct is 1 upon 2. It's 50%. Suppose if you toss a coin the second time, the chances you'll be correct the second time also will be 1 upon 2 is 50%. The chances that you'll be right both the times, the first time you toss a coin and the second time you toss a coin, is 1 upon 2 into 1 upon 2 is equal to 1 upon 4. 50% of 50% is equal to 25%. This is called as the theory of probability. If you toss a coin thrice and if you make a wild guess, the chances that you will be right all three times is 1 upon 2 into 1 upon 2 into 1 upon 2 is equal to 1 upon 8. It's equal to 12 is 50% of 50% of 50% is 12.5%. Suppose you throw a dice. Options are either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a cube. There are 6 options. The chances that if you make a wild guess and you'll be right when you throw a dice is 1 upon 6. If you throw a dice twice, the chances that you'll be right both the times is 1 upon 6 into 1 upon 6 is 1 upon 36. This is called as theory of probability. Suppose someone says what is mentioned in the Quran is guesswork, is fluke. Let's put this theory of probability to the Quran. Quran says the shape of the earth is spherical. Suppose the shape of the earth, you can think of 10 things. Maybe triangular, maybe quadrangle, maybe heptagonal, maybe octagonal. Maybe there are 10 shapes that you can think of. Some will say spherical, some will say cylindrical. The chances that someone make a wild guess and the answer being correct is, if there are 10 options, the 2 options, the chances someone makes a wild guess and he'll be correct is only 5%. Now Quran says that every living thing is made of water. Now if you start thinking, what can the living creature be made of? You can think of 1,000 things. You may think of sand, you may think of wood, you may think of stone, you may think of skin, you may think of bone. You may think of aluminium, you may think of steel, you may think of iron. 1,000 things you can think of. Water, oil. The chances that if you make a wild guess and you'll be correct is 1 upon 1,000. 1 upon 1,000 is 0.1%. 1 upon 1,000. The chances that the world is spherical, light of the moon is borrowed light, and every living thing is made from water. All 3 things being correct is 1 upon 10 into 1 upon 2 into 1 upon 1,000 is equal to 1 upon 20,000. It comes to 0.05%. Only in these 3 things, the probability of someone being right is 0.05%. I've already mentioned so many scientific facts, and I'm going to mention more. I can keep on quoting. You can think for yourself, you being the intelligent audience, that if someone makes a wild guess and all these being right, it will be 0.0000000. When will the 1 come? I don't know. And today science tells us and mathematics tells us that if 10 raised to 50 zeros, the answer is 0. 10 raised to negative 50 zeros, the answer is 0. So besides Quran saying every living thing is made from water in Surah Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 30. It says in Surah Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 45, we have created every animal from water. Quran says in Surah Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 54, we have created every human being from water. If you apply the theory of probability to all these scientific facts I'm quoting, and you can think of the options, in some of the scientific facts, the option can be 1,000, some can be 10,000, Some can be 2, some can be 100, some can be 500. If you keep on multiplying 1 upon 500, 1 upon 10,000, 1 upon 1,000, the net result will be 0. In the field of botany, previously we thought only the human beings have sexes and the animals have sexes, male and female. We did not know that even the plants have sexes, male and female. We came to know recently, 100 years back, 200 years back, 300 years back. Quran mentioned 1400 years ago in Surah Taha, chapter number 20, verse number 53. That is, He who sends down water from the sky. With it brings forth diverse pairs of plants. In pairs, each separate from the other. The Arabic word used is zawja, meaning pairs, male and female. The Quran says in Surah Ra'd, chapter number 13, verse number 3, we have created every kind of fruit in pairs, 2 and 2. The Quran says that not only the animals and the human beings have got pairs, even the plants have got pairs, male and female. The Quran says in Surah Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 36, that it is He who has created everything in pairs, the things which the human beings know and the things which the human beings don't know. So not only the animals and the plants and the human beings have got sexes, male and female, even a phenomenon like electricity. Today we know that even the electricity has got atoms which has got negatively and positively charged, protons and neutrons and electrons. Quran says that He has created everything in pairs. The things you know, the things which you have knowledge of, and things which you don't have knowledge of. In the field of zoology, Quran says in Surah Anam, chapter number 6, verse number 38, it says that it is He who has created every animal that walks on the earth and every bird that flies in the air to live in communities like the human beings. Today science tells us, like the human beings, even the birds and the animals, they live in communities, which we came to recently. Quran says in Surah Nahl, chapter number 16, verse number 68 and 69, it is He who has taught the bee to build its cells in trees, in hills, in human habitations, and to eat of what the earth produces, and to find the spacious path of their Lord with great skill. What does the Quran mean by saying it has taught the bee to build the spacious, to find the spacious path of their Lord with great skill? It was Sir Fawn Fresh in 1973 who got the Nobel Prize for discovering the movement of the bee, the behavior of the bee. And today science tells us that whenever a bee finds a new flower or a new garden, it goes and tells its fellow bee the exact direction of the new flower or the new garden with a process called as the bee dance. And furthermore, this gender used for the worker bee in Surah Nahl chapter 16 verse 60 and 69 is the female gender, fasluki or kulli. Previously we thought that the worker bee was the male bee. No wonder Shakespeare in his play Henry IV, he writes that the soldiers, the male soldiers, they go out talking about the bees and they report to the king. Today science tells us the worker bees are not the male bees, they are the female bees. And they don't report to the king, they report to the queen. Imagine, the Quran even describes the sex of the worker bee as being a female gender, which science has come to know today, recently, and Quran mentions 14 years ago. Quran says in Surah Ankabut, chapter 29, verse number 41, that the parable of those who take for protectors anyone besides Almighty God is like that of the spider. They build for themselves homes like the spider, and verily the home of the spider is fragile. The house of the spider is fragile. Besides describing the physical nature of the house of the spider, that the web of the spider being weak, it says that anyone who worships anyone besides God, they are building for themselves houses like that of the spider. Besides being fragile and weak, it even gives an indication about the family relationship. Today science tells us that many a time the female spider, it kills the male spider, and they're called as black widows. Imagine the Quran, besides describing the physical nature of the house of the spider being fragile, it describes the physical relationships. It is like that of the spider, which many a times the female spider kills the male spider. Quran says in Surah Namal, chapter number 27, verse number 17 and 18, that when Solomon and his army, with hosts of men, jinns and birds, when they walked and when they approached a lowly valley of ants, one of the ants said, "O ye ant, get into the human habitations. Get into your habitations, lest Solomon and his army will unknowingly trample you beneath the feet." People may think, what kind of a fairy tale book is the Quran? The ants talking among themselves? It sounds like a fairy tale book. What an old book it is, 400 years back. But today, after science has advanced, we have come to know that the animal or insect which has the closest resemblance to the lifestyle of the human being, it is the ant. The ant buries the dead the same way as the human beings do. They have a very sophisticated method of labor in which they have managers, they have foremen, they have supervisors, they have workers. They have a very sophisticated method of communication where they speak to each other. They very often meet to chat. They even have marketplaces where they exchange goods. You know how we have marketplaces, how we have souk. The ants have marketplaces where they exchange goods. And when an ant stores any grain, and if the grain begins to bud, it chops off the bud as though it knew that budding will cause rotting of the grain. And if in monsoon, in rainy season, if the grain gets wet, the ants get it out in the sunlight to dry, as though they knew that humidity will cause root system, which will cause rotting of the grain. You know, many times we see the ant taking grain and then going in the sunlight. We wonder where they're going. They're going out in the sun to dry the grain, as though they knew that humidity will cause rotting of the grain. In the field of medicine,